Welcome into the Addison to 35th podcast, the Chicago baseball podcast. I'm your host for this Cubs episode, Ryan Herrera. And as I keep saying every time I come on here, the Cubs have played themselves into a really good position. We are now into May. We're recording this right after the Cubs take a series in Pittsburgh against the Pirates, coming off a 9-0 win, a 4-3 loss, and an 8-3 W to take the series. Cubs are 19-13. They got the sixth best record in Major League Baseball, or maybe it's tied for the sixth best record, but they're right up there at the top of the majors, and they're up 2 games right now in the National League Central. And when we're talking about the kind of season the Cubs need to have, right? Not falling into any sort of a slump or digging themselves a hole. Like that's kind of something that we've seen the last couple of years as the Cubs, had some playoff hopes and weren't able to get there in the end, falling into holes and slumps and all that kind of stuff. That has cost them playoff opportunities the last couple of years. And now the Cubs, even with that rough March, April stretch of games, right? They faced the Dodgers, was it 7 times? The Diamondbacks 7 times, and the Padres 6. The Rangers were mixed in there. Even the A's, who were above 500 last time I checked, or at least 500 last time I checked. A lot of a lot of good games in there, good pitching, good lineups and stuff. And because it came out on the other side of that stretch with a really positive record, and then they go and take 2 of 3 from the Pirates on the road, their first taste of National League Central play this season, and do pretty well. And I know that Wednesday game didn't go how the Cubs and the fans wanted it to go. Right, there was an error there that we will talk about in a second, and maybe just defensive miscue, maybe cost them a couple runs, but didn't exactly go the way they needed it to go. But when you're talking about, I think going into that series, if you said the Cubs have 3 games in Pittsburgh, one of them is going to be against Paul Skeens, the young phenom in Pittsburgh. If you said they were going to take 2 of those 3 games, one of them, especially when one of them is coming against Paul Skeens, I think you're taking that if you're the Cubs. If you're the Cubs fans, I mean, you got to win series, right? 2 out of 3 is nothing bad about that. Taking 2 of 3, and I mean, you could have swept the series, of course, but you didn't. But you still won it. You won 2 of 3, and one of those games was coming against Paul Skeens. You're happy with that. You're happy with that. You want more from this team, of course, because they do need to keep playing at a really high level and get themselves into that playoff position the longer we go into this season. But taking 2 of 3 in Pittsburgh, there's nothing wrong with that, and I think you're the Cubs. You're definitely taking that, and if you're Cubs fans, you should be fine with that. As the Pirates haven't been a good team in this division for a while, but division games are always tough. Division games are always going to be tough because those are your rivals. Those are the guys you play. I think what is it now, like 19 times a year or something like that. Whatever it's at now. Like those are the guys you play, or maybe 13 now. They may have trimmed it down to 13. But those are the teams you play the most throughout the season. Those are the teams you see every year and the most every year. And they're the ones that want to go out and beat you and knock you down a peg and knock you down the standings or whatever. So to take 2 of 3 from the Pirates, another good series from them, and keep moving forward at a good pace. You keep winning 2 of 3 games. I don't remember exactly what it matches out to, but that's a 667 winning percentage, right? In 2 of 3 games, like that's a very high winning percentage. Probably unsustainable, but you take that when you can get it every series. But to start off things, if you see on the rundown, if you're watching on YouTube, the first topic is Cubs still great at the plate, and that's I want to keep highlighting that because the Cubs have been it feels like all year. I mean, I know in Tokyo those first 2 games against the Dodgers didn't look great, but I mean this lineup is just continuing to go out and get things done and lead the way. The Cubs pitching staff has dealt with some injuries and some underperformance, and the bullpen is still getting things figured out, and the rotation we'll talk about in a second. But the pitching staff has dealt with some adversity, and the lineup has gone out and carried the team and gone out and been what the Cubs have needed to get through that rough March April stretch and come back out on the other side of it with a 19-13 record. Like they've needed that. They've needed that lineup to produce and produce consistently, and that's what they've done. I mean, you look at some of the numbers. I keep listing off numbers every time I talk about the offense, but like it's important to look at that and see where they stack up in Major League Baseball. They're third in WRC plus 124. Their OPS is 799, which is third, and that's their second. Their second in on base percentage at 342. Third in slugging at 457. Second in weighted on base average 350. Third in isolated power 193. Second in batting average, if that's your cup of tea, with a 264 average. Sixth in walk rate with a 10.0%, and a fifth in strikeout rate 19.8%. First in runs scored 192, which is 15 more than the Yankees, who are second, in just one more game. So they're averaging, I believe, 6 runs per game right now, tops in the league, and just not something that happens very often for any Major League Baseball team, at least over a full season. So 1 month in, averaging 6 runs is pretty good. But then you look at even their base running stats, right? 4.2 base running runs above average. That's second. That's the overall Fangraphs base running metric. They're second right now. They have the most stolen bases at 44. They're tied for the sixth fewest caught stealings at 6. So obviously a really good, for how much they are attempting to steal bases, like a very good success rate. Going back to that fifth strikeout rate at 19.8%. There was that Tuesday, I believe, was no strikeouts throughout the game. And I think that was like the first time since like 2013, something like that. The Cubs didn't strike out across an entire game. Obviously, again, something that doesn't happen very often, but that's kind of what the Cubs are right now. They're not a major strikeout team. You also look at Paul Skeens that start on Thursday. They were supposed to have Skeens over 6.5 strikeouts or something like that was the most bet prop of the day. I don't know if that's 100% true, but that's something that I was seeing, that at least that was a heavily favored prop of people betting over on Paul Skeens' strikeouts against the Cubs that day. He only struck him out twice. They chased him after 5. He got 5 innings, 3 earned runs. They had 3 home runs in the 5th. That was Dansby, Kyle Tucker, and Seiya Suzuki home runs against Paul Skeens. Chased him after 5. I mean, you're talking about a guy who came into the year probably as a Cy Young, as really high up on the Cy Young favorite like list, right? Betting odds. I don't know what the betting odds were, but pretty high up there. They go and do some damage against him and don't let him strike them out a ton. That's huge. And something I haven't really looked at is a little bit more under the hood for the Cubs offensively. They aren't hitting, like they're what am I trying to say? Like they're not hitting or just smoking the ball every time they put the ball in play, right? Like I think they're in the top half when it comes to like average exit velocity, average barrel rate, or barrel rate and hard hit percentage. Like they have, I want to say that barrel rate is maybe in the top 10, so it's still good. They're the top half of the majors in those categories, but they're not like first, second, third, and they're like they are with some of their other offensive numbers. So they're not the hardest hitting team. They're not just smoking the ball every time they go up there. But what they are doing really well is their plate discipline, right? You look at their 10th in out of zone swing percentage, or out of zone swing rate, just pitches, swinging at pitches out of the zone at 30.3%. They're 5th at zone swing rate, swinging at pitches inside the zone, 70%. Their outside the zone contact rate is 4th, 65.6%. And then their out of zone contact rate is 9th with 87.4%. They're not getting a lot of called strikes and whiffs, right? Like they have like a 24.7% or something like that. They're really high up on the leaderboards in those plate discipline numbers. So when you're talking about what the Cubs overall are doing offensively, it's not that they're going up and hitting the crap out of the ball every time they put the ball in play or all that kind of stuff. And they're doing well at that. They're just not the best in the league at that, but they aren't chasing a lot. They are making a lot of contact. They are making a lot of contact in the zone. When they do swing out of the zone, they're still making good amounts of contact on those pitches. Like that's what you need to be as an offensive team when you're trying to be this great offensive team and you're trying to just continue to keep doing what they've been doing, those are the kind of numbers you need. You need to have the kind of plate discipline the Cubs have shown so far, and yeah, they have shown that so far, and that's what's helping drive this offense to be where they are in the league. I mean, just look at the overall position player value for the Cubs. They have the second highest, second most wins above replacement when it comes to what Fangraphs says. Right, 8.5 wins above replacement, second in the majors. Like we're over a month now into the season. I think we're roughly 20% of the way done with the season, and the Cubs position player group has been at the top or near the top in all of baseball throughout the first month plus of the season. That's huge. That's huge. Again, when you're talking about where the Cubs need to go, when you're talking about the injuries and the underperformance where the Cubs have dealt with in the rotation and the bullpen, you've needed that lineup to be leading the way, and that's what they've done. And you look at the record, you look at where they land in Major League Baseball, especially when you're talking about that tied for first run differential plus 52. The offense has been doing a lot of the lifting, a lot of the heavy lifting, and the rotation has stepped up with some injuries or with absences in the rotation, and the bullpen I think the bullpen has improved overall the last couple of weeks. I think they just look better. Some guys are falling better into their roles. Some of those back end guys like Ryan Presley, I think, has looked better. So things are getting better in the pitching staff, but it is the offense leading the way, and that's just massive for what they're trying to do here. And I do want to highlight some of the players. Like Kyle Tucker has got a 159 WRC plus, which is 10th in baseball, and he goes overall at a 1.6 FWAR, ninth in baseball. He's got that 15.3% walk rate, which is 19th in baseball, and a 12% strikeout rate, which is 14th. Like numbers that I don't know how sustainable they are, but they show you the kind of hitter that he is. He's walking more than he's striking out. He's putting up great offensive numbers. He's doing well in the outfield and right field, and overall value of a position player. Like he's right up there in the top 10 of the leaderboard. Cubs went out and traded for him for a reason, and whether he does stay beyond this season or not, you have him for this season, and he's going out and producing like a superstar. That's what the Cubs have needed for a few years now. We've talked about that as this rebuild's gone on. Like the Cubs needed a star, and Kyle Tucker has been that star for him, right? But he's also not alone. Seiya Suzuki has got a 171 WRC plus, which is eighth in baseball. And even though he's only a DH, right? He doesn't hit or he doesn't play the field, or I don't even know if he's gotten in the field this season. He probably has at some point, but it's not often. He's got 1.2 FWAR, pretty good for a DH. Michael Busch has a 150 WRC plus, which is 25th in baseball. I didn't write down what his F4 is. I don't think it's that high. But when you're talking about offensive numbers, 25th highest WRC plus in baseball. Carson Kelly still has a 256 WRC plus. I think his numbers have actually gone down in the last week or so. There was a couple offers in there, but like a 256 WRC plus. And when you're talking about a guy who's only really playing half the games, I think he's only played 17 games so far this season. He has 1.4 wins above replacement, according to Fangraphs. It's 16th in baseball. For a guy, I mean, I was looking at the leaderboards earlier. Most of these guys that are around him or even above him have played 9, 10 plus more games than Carson Kelly has. He's 16th in F4. That's better than Shohei Ohtani, who's only hitting right now. Obviously, he's not pitching yet. I don't know when he's going to start pitching, but there's some hope that he's going to start pitching for the Dodgers again here some point this summer. He's got a higher F4 than him right now. He's got a higher F4 than like Francisco Lindor. So Carson Kelly, you're talking about they brought him in to be this 1A 1B tandem with Miguel Amaya, who also has a 106 WRC plus, better than where he was last year. Talking about a much more productive offensive catching tandem right now. But Carson Kelly he continues to hit the ball well. He had that home run on he had a home run on Wednesday or Tuesday in Pittsburgh. I don't remember exactly which day it was, but he did hit a home run in Pittsburgh. He's been more than the Cubs could have possibly hoped for offensively as an offensive producing player. That's been huge for him. Ian Happ has gotten his WRC plus all the way back up to a 118. So you see on the flip side is kind of the example of small samples at this juncture of the season. Like he didn't have the best start for the first couple of weeks offensively. He's really turned it around. He's up to a 118 WRC plus. Nico Horner is down to 95 WRC plus, which needs to be better, of course. But he had that really hot start. He's probably hit a slump here. I don't know how long it's been, but he's still at 95 WRC plus, which is just below league average, not that far below league average. He's giving you Gold Glove defense at second base, but you do want to see that WRC plus get higher. And then Dansby's gotten himself back up to an 87 WRC plus. Like that's not good enough, obviously, as an overall number, but he has been better recently. I think he had a really good series in Pittsburgh. I mean, coming off that Tokyo series, I thought he looked like the best hitter in those two games, and then it felt like immediately, or not, maybe not necessarily immediately, but like when the season restarted at the end of March, he wasn't hitting well, and he wasn't hitting. I mean, you could see the strikeouts, and it looked like he was kind of guessing at the plate and swinging through fastballs and that kind of stuff, and just didn't look like he was in a good place offensively. More recently, he has been, and he has gotten those numbers up a little bit. And the hope for him is that those just continue to move in the right direction. I don't expect Dansby to be a 120 WRC plus player. I mean, he's here and he's getting paid a ton because he's one of the best defensive shortstops in baseball, right? One of the best defenders at one of the most important defensive positions. He's that. And what you can get from him offensively, if he gives you positive production, that's huge when you're talking about the overall value of him at the because you have all these other guys hitting so well so far this season. That's helped mask Dansby's his issues a little bit at it's helped mask his issues a little bit offensively. But if you can get him hitting even just a little bit above league average with the Gold Glove caliber defense he provides, that's a pretty important player for the Cubs. And he got moved down in the order. He's been hitting eighth, I think, the last 3 games. And so that's probably not great. You probably want him to be able to be hitting at a better, higher in the order, considering what he is being paid and the player he can be. But he's doing a better job recently, and you just need Dansby Swanson to keep things moving in a better direction for him when you're talking about the overall value of him. And then to end it on the offensive talk, or a position player talk at least, is Crow-Armstrong. And so that's my next part of this rundown right here. Crow-Armstrong just keeps on shining. Like, he continues to break out. He keeps looking more and more like a star, it seems, every single time he plays. He has fallen down at least offensively, a 125 WRC plus. I think it was like 149 or so maybe last week. That's 51st in baseball. So, but I mean, you're still talking about a guy who's basically a top 50 offensive player in baseball, at least for qualified players. When you're talking about the kind of defense he provides, the base running he provides, I mean, he's overall Fangraphs WAR 1.8. He's 5th in baseball. He's been a majorly valuable player. He's still giving you well above league average offensive production at 125, but he's also giving you, I mean, look, he's got 6 defensive runs saved, which is first among center fielders, 7 outs above average, which is first in the majors. He's 100th percentile base running value, 100th percentile, like at the top of the league in base running value, and 100th percentile in fielding run value. Talking about his 12 stolen bases are tied for 3rd. He's only been caught stealing 3 times. His base running runs above average at 2.8. That's first in baseball. Like, he's just overall been a tremendously valuable player for the Cubs. Even when he wasn't hitting to begin the season, he was still super valuable because he provides Gold Glove level defense in the outfield, and he's got elite base running instincts, and he can be an elite base runner when he's getting on base, right? Yet now that he has been hitting the ball well the last few weeks, you're seeing all of that come together as a player, and he's showing how valuable of a player he can be. He is becoming a star before our very eyes. Or like The Athletic did a big piece on him. Ken Rosenthal did a big piece on him. You're hearing PCA chants everywhere from Tokyo to Chicago, right? Like, he went out to LA, I guess the Dodgers earlier in April, and had a great series. Like, he's been a super valuable player. I mean, just in WAR alone, he's been the Cubs' most valuable player. He's been the 5th most valuable player in baseball. You talk. I remember, all the outrage or just general dislike of Jed Hoyer using the phrase like they need players to outperform expectations or outperform projections. And a lot of people didn't like that. And I got that because it's like, why don't you just fill your teams with players who have high projections, right? That's not feasible to just honestly, it's not feasible to be what the Dodgers are, right? And they don't have a 1 through 9 full of guys that are projected to be 3, 4, 5 WAR players. But they do have a lot of those guys, but they also have guys that are outperforming expectations. That's what you need to be if you're going to be a really successful team. So Jed isn't wrong in saying that they do need players who can outperform projections. Like obviously, you need the players who again are projected to be or who are already projected to be high level players like Kyle Tucker, right? Again, they went out and got Kyle Tucker. I don't remember what he was projected to be going into the season as far as WAR goes, but he's a guy who can give you 5+ WAR, and you can kind of expect that. And if he doesn't get that, then it feels a little, I don't want to say underwhelming because that's a really good player still, but a guy that's a superstar who can go up and put that 6+ WAR season together offensively, defensively. But you do need the guys that can outperform expectations, outperform projections. Carson Kelly is one of those guys that's been doing it. Miguel Amaya has been doing it to maybe a lesser extent, but still doing pretty well for himself. And PCA is that guy who's just way outperforming projections right now. And you need that, but you also, if you're the Cubs, you love to see it because you went out and got this guy when he was hurt in 2020 or 2021 at the trade deadline. You traded a beloved player in Javi Baez. You also traded Trevor Williams, of course, but Javi Baez, the beloved 2016 World Series champion. He's always going to be that in whenever he comes back to Chicago. You saw that in August last year when he came back to the Dodgers. You traded that at the deadline, and you got this guy who was hurt, and I think he had been drafted the year before out of high school. Like now you're finally seeing the fruits of that labor, right? You're seeing it's taken a few years to get to where we are now, but now a few years later, you're seeing the guy that you did trade Javi Baez for becoming a star in his own way. And that's, again, if you're the Cubs, you have to love to see that because that is exactly what they need from PCA. And the older he gets, the more he gets experience in this game, defending, playing playing outfield in every ballpark, seeing all the major league pitching. I mean, it looks like he's just going to continue to get better and better and become a more valuable player, and that's absolutely huge for this Cubs team. I do also want to talk about the. Before actually, I do want to highlight the PCA play. I think that was in the 5th inning on Wednesday. This just kind of shows you who PCA is. There was a sacrifice fly. I want to say the bases were loaded at that point, but the sac fly, and it was Joey Bart, I want to say, was running from third, like got to home plate, didn't slide into home plate. It looked like a pretty routine sacrifice fly that a guy generally easily scores on. PCA camps under it, gets some momentum going as he catches the ball. Crow hops, perfect throw to home plate. And he was called out, right? they called him out at first, and the Pirates challenged it, and they overturned the call. But like the fact that Pete Crow-Armstrong even made that a close play shows you how good he is as a defender, his instincts, his ability, and then that just on top of everything else he's doing right now is like, yeah, the guy's becoming a star. He continues to shine, he continues to break out, and again, that's massive for him and it's massive for the Cubs. But now moving on to the rotation, uh, you know, Colin Ray has been more than the Cubs, similar to Carson Kelly, just more than the Cubs could have hoped for. Especially like I don't know if they foresaw him making this many starts this early in the season. I don't know how many starts and innings they were expecting him to go out and pitch for them this season, but Colin Ray has a 1.46 ERA on the season, and then in his 4 starts, specifically a 1.86 ERA. That's with 6 innings, 2 earned runs allowed on Thursday in Pittsburgh. He's been massive for him when you're talking about the rotation, that back end of the rotation, and being one of those depth options that they have to count on pretty early in the season, a lot earlier than they would have wanted to, probably. I mean, if they could have gone the whole season and not needed Colin Ray to start games, that's probably a really good scenario, right? That wasn't necessarily realistic. And so they were probably going to have to start Colin Ray at some point this season, whether it was because of injuries or underperformance or whatever. And he's gone out and he's filled in admirably. He's done a really good job there, filling in with injuries and the rest of the rotation depth options. Matthew Boyd, another guy, he's got 2.70 ERA and 6 starts. That's 21st in baseball. He had that 5 innings pitched, 2 earned run start on Wednesday. Like, he's been overall really good. And again, another guy who's outperforming projections most likely. I don't remember what his projections were. You're talking about a guy 6 starts into the season with a 2.70 ERA. Like, that's pretty good, and what the Cubs need when we're talking about this rotation navigating through some of the adversity that they faced so far this season. Shota Imanaga had that 5 innings pitched scoreless start on Tuesday. He's had a couple of bad starts mixed in here recently, and you don't expect Shota to be this sub 2 ERA guy all season. They're good hitting teams that see him a few more times, start getting more data and looks at him. Like, he's not going to go out and throw gems every single time he goes out there, but he has a scoreless start on Tuesday, and he's down to a 2.77 ERA through 7 starts. That's 26th in baseball. So a little bit behind Matthew Boyd, but 26th among qualified pitchers in baseball. You got 2 Cubs in the top 30 right now when you're talking about that. And then you add in Colin Ray's his ERA, his 1.86 ERA, and his 4 starts. Like, those are 3 guys who are pitching overall pretty well in the rotation when you need them to be able to pitch well. Jameson Tyon's got I think it was a 4.01 ERA in his 6 starts. You want to see that drop back to kind of where he was last season. He had that rough first outing. I want to say it was in Arizona, but he's had mostly better starts since. And when you're talking about a guy that's third or fourth in your rotation, of course you want better, but he's not your ace, and you're gonna expect some rough patches there. So yeah, a 4.01 ERA is not what you want to see out of Tyon. You want that to be a little bit better, but I think he's definitely improved and had mostly better starts since that first one out of the gate in the season. But the guy that you need to be better is Ben Brown. He's got a 5.96 ERA in 5 starts. He's had some really good signs. He's shown some really good signs this year, and he's had those moments where he just looks like when he's right, when he's on, when he's at the top of his game, he can get anybody out. I mean, I don't remember what his stat line was in LA, but he had that great start there against the Dodgers. But he's also had his clunkers. He's also, I mean, that Phillies game over last weekend. I don't remember exactly what his stat line was, but I remember I think it was 3 innings in, he breezed through pretty quickly, and then after that, it didn't. After that, I want to say maybe the 4th inning, he kind of let things get out of hand, and Craig Counsell, I think he basically said after that, he didn't pull any punches with it. He said Ben, we need better out of Ben Brown, and you can't let games get out of hand in that sense, right? So Ben Brown has the kind of potential and the stuff and the tools to be a really good. You've seen it. You've seen it at different points in the season where he does have the kind of stuff and the tools to be a really good pitcher. You see the velo and the width potential with the curveball. Like, he has that kind of stuff, but he just hasn't put it all together as far as a very long, nice run of outings. That's not the worst thing when you're talking about a guy who just doesn't have a lot of major league experience. He didn't pitch after early June last season. He only has what I say 5 starts so far this year. So he doesn't have a lot of major league experience. And so you can't expect him to go out and be perfect every single time he goes out there. But you do want to see him start to find more consistency and be more consistently good on the mound. And the hope is obviously that comes in time. But when you do see the kind of potential, the stuff, you see that he has when he's on, he's got the kind of stuff that really no one else in the Cubs rotation does have. You want to see him start meeting that potential more consistently sooner rather than later. But the more Ben Brown goes pitches at the major league level, maybe you start to see that. Maybe you start to see him figure things out and figure out ways to adjust mid game and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, you need to see better out of Ben Brown overall more consistently. But he has shown you the kind of signs where you're like, if he can get there and get there consistently, he's going to be a good pitcher in this league. And so that's kind of what the Cubs are hoping for, is just him finding and reaching that potential more consistently sooner rather than later. Behind those guys, of course, the rotation depth has taken its hits. Justin Steele's out for the rest of the year with that elbow surgery he had a couple weeks ago. Javier Assad, I think it was a restrain of his oblique. He's got a grade 2 strain of the oblique, and he got transferred to the 60-day injured list on April 30th. Not expected to return until basically June. That's a tough blow because I've been a little bit skeptical of Javier Assad just because some of the underlying numbers weren't great. You know, he doesn't have the best stuff. He doesn't have the high velo. There was just some underlying numbers when he was starting all last season that didn't look the best. And so there was a little bit of concern there, a little bit of skepticism, but he was a guy that kind of just kept going out and getting it done when he needed to. I remember asking, or I don't know if I asked, but Craig Counsell was asked about Assad, and he had basically said that like he just makes the pitches when he had to. And sometimes you can't teach that. Sometimes that's, it's a skill that guys who just maybe overall don't have the best look or stuff or velo or whatever it is, but when it comes down to it and you need to make a pitch, Javier Assad was that guy that was often making the pitch. He was making that pitch to get out of a jam. I mean, even if it was jams that he was working himself into, making the kind of pitch to get out of a jam and keep the Cubs in it or keep the Cubs ahead or whatever it was. He was doing that often. And so not having that, not even having him available is tough when you're talking about the rotation and the potential options to be pitching in there. Who knows if he would have carried what he did last season, first full season as a starter, into this season and had a bunch of success so far. But not having that option, not having his availability, and not being able to use him at all, that's tough when you're talking about the Cubs starting pitching depth. And so with him and Steele out, you need those five guys right now. I mean, Cade Horton, he's got a 1.17 ERA in AAA and 5 starts, a 14% walk rate, but a 32.6% strikeout rate. He does have more strikeouts than he's given up hits and walks combined. But the walk rate is high, obviously, and you definitely need to see that go down. But I think it's just more seasoning at that level. Another guy that lost a lot of I don't think he pitched after May last season. Like a guy that lost a lot of last season due to injury. It was some kind of shoulder injury. I don't remember exactly the terminology, but he had an injury that they kind of just shut him down when it got later in the season, and he wasn't ready to come back. It was kind of a shut it down, get healthy, fully recover, and then come back next season ready to go. He has done that for the most part, right? I mentioned the walk rate, and that's still relatively high, but the ERA is low, the strikeout rate is low. He's not giving up a bunch of hits. He's striking out a lot of guys. But I think it just comes down to the Cubs want him to get more consistent, good innings at the AAA level. So maybe it's a June debut or a July or whatever, sometime in the summer, right? I don't expect it to be in May unless injuries, unless something happens that forces them to bring him up. I don't expect that to be in the next couple of weeks, but he is pitching pretty well. And the more seasoning he gets, the more innings, the more experience, the more just overall good, consistent innings that he gets. He's getting closer and closer to making that debut. So that's a potential rotation option. I don't think you consider it an option right now, just because I don't think the Cubs are ready to come up. I don't think they think Cade Horton is ready to come up, but it does look like the more innings he pitches and they continue to produce good results, he's on a crash course for the big leagues. And I think you want that to be as a starter. I don't necessarily think you want him to come up in the Justin Steele, Keegan Thompson mold of coming up as a reliever to get his feet wet. I think if you do bring him up, you want it to be because you have a spot for him in the rotation and can let him just. I mean, he's such a highly regarded pitching prospect. That's kind of what you want from him. So we'll see where that comes. But right now, the rotation I think has stepped up, and a couple of those guys' absences, and just with the absence of a lot of the depth they hoped they had. Um, Especially Colin Ray. I'm going to highlight him again because Colin Ray has pitched very, very well and looks like he keeps getting better as a starter. And every time he goes out there, and I don't know how much longer you expect that to happen, but it's happened, and that's huge for the Cubs with the position they're in with the rotation. Outside of the position players and the rotation, or outside of the offense and the rotation, I do want to talk about third base for a second. John Birdie's been getting a lot of starts there. He's hit pretty well, honestly, a 110 WRC plus. I think overall has looked capable there at third base. I did say I want to say it was the last time that I was on here. I said like if you're a team looking at postseason expectations at the end of the season, you probably don't want John Birdie to be your starting third baseman. Like I think he's a pretty good bench, a role player, bat off the bench, or defender, or utility guy. Like I think if you can have him in that role, that's pretty good. I don't think you want him to be your starting third baseman. He has hit pretty well, but he did make that error at third base in the seventh inning on Wednesday. There was rewatching it was looked just like you know it was a softly hit ground ball. I think it was Isaiah Connor Falefa running down that hit it and was running down first. And rewatching the play, it looked like had he let that ball go through to Dansby, Dansby would have had a shot to make it. I don't know that I don't know for sure that Dansby gets him, but it looked like if he lets that go through, Dansby probably has a shot. I mean, if Birdie makes that play, he of course the out is probably made because he would have had a lot of times. He charged more to the side, but a little bit in. It would have been a pretty simple throw over to first base for him. But um, the ball hits off his glove, gets past Dansby. The Pirates get a guy to first base, and then now you're looking at an inning that I think would have ended on the next at bat. I think O'Neill Cruz struck out, and then because that inning didn't end, the Pirates ended up scoring 2 runs and ended up taking that game. So not it's hard to look at one play as saying this is the reason they lost, right? Because so many plays happen in the game. The Cubs scored, they could have scored more runs, kind of thing, right? But you do look at that one as a pivotal moment in the game that helped change the game in the Pirates' favor. So again, I just bring that all up because I don't think John Birdie is the guy you want starting long term at third base if you're looking at postseason expectations for this team. Vidal Brujan and Nicky Lopez also aren't those guys either, right? I think Birdie is the best of those options, but that's just kind of highlights the point of why you need Matt Shaw back sooner rather than later. Um, Looking at Matt Shaw at the minor league level right now, AAA, his 10 games there, 46 plate appearances in AAA, slashing 324, 457, 486 with a W55 or 155 WRC plus. He does have a 17.4% walk rate and a 6.5% strikeout rate. So he is going down and overall hitting AAA pitching like really well out of the gate. Like that's what you needed to see from Matt Shaw. One of the things that is a little bit concerning with him right now, at the minor league level, he's only got that 1.5 degree launch angle, 84.3 mile per hour exit velo, and a 29.4% hard hit rate. Those are all lower than his AAA numbers at the minor league level last season, or AAA numbers last season. Minor league level. Those are all lower than that. What he did a year ago. He's got a 53.1% ground ball rate, which is up from his 2024 number. So for Shaw, while the results are there, it still just kind of looks like he's not performing like the guy who is that power speed threat. Like he's never going to be like the most powerful slugger out there, right? But he is a guy that can hit the ball hard, hit it on a line, drive it to the gas, drive it over the fence. And that's kind of what Matt Shaw has done at every level. He's eventually done that at every level coming up through the minor leagues, even in college, right? He hasn't been doing that in AAA since he's been back down there. I think that's one of those things that the Cubs need to see. That's something that Jed Hoyer talked about when they optioned him back down. That they just need him to be, um, they need to see him be that guy that's not just trying to survive at the plate. That's not into this big contact oriented approach. Like they want to see him be the guy who's driving the ball on a line into the gaps, like that kind of stuff. That's who Matt Shaw can be as a hitter, and so that's probably something they need to see from him at the minor league level before he's ready to come up. You hope that happens sooner rather than later because the Cubs, I think, their best shot this season is with him at third base, and obviously, of course, like him continuing to progress and improve as a third baseman. But those are numbers you need to see get better from him while he's in the minor leagues right now. Honestly, I'm confident that they will because he's a guy that's proven that AAA pitching is just basically no match for him at this point. Major league pitching he struggled against, but AAA pitching he's had no issues with, and so I expect those contact quality numbers to go back up. And again, just hopefully sooner rather than later if you're the Cubs. Um, I do quickly. My dad has been bothering me about doing this. He likes to rant. My dad's a big Cubs fan. He's been a big Cubs fan my whole life, and he likes to rant about the Cubs and about baseball. So I do want to read this text. His rant from my dad. Rant text from my dad is a new a new thing I'm going to start doing here. Every time he sends it to me, a new segment is what I'm trying to call it. Rant from my dad. This is word for word. He said that's okay. Uh, so this was he actually sent me this last week, and I didn't bring it on the podcast last week, but he's bothering me about doing it again. So or about doing it. So I will bring it up. But so this is from last week, but I was so happy to hear 2 podcasts ago you give Tucker's batting average at the end of all those other numbers you gave out. OPS, WAR, OCD, LCD, and whatever other abbreviations you millennials have thought of. Batting average, RBIs, and home runs still make the most sense. Exit velocity. Who cares how hard you hit it if it's caught? If it finds a hole, batting average goes up, telling me you got to hit. That's all I need. Last time the Padres had all those bloop hits and soft liners to score a bunch of runs, or was it the Diamondbacks? Whoever it was, the point is contact. If you have a lineup with 5 or 6 players with 270 and above batting average, you'll be good. If you have 7 or 8 at 270 and 3 or 4 of them are hitting over 300, you're going to have a really good offense. Putting pressure on the defense and pitcher are key. Bring back bunting for hits, not sacrifice unless the situation is right, like a squeeze to win the game. You got to have a table setter like 2016 had Fowler. He spelled it Foler. Is that how you spell it? LOL. You know who I'm talking about. He had power, walk speed, and made great contact that year. Hap is doing a great job so far, but I think PCA is a future leadoff hitter. Speed and power and can lay down a bunt. If he'd get on base in the first inning leading off, it would be almost sure he scores. Ricky Henderson, Kenny Lofton type. Anyway, I went off the rail a little bit. If you share this with counsel and he wants to sit down and have a conversation, let me know and I'll fit him in my schedule. I can't necessarily disagree with him. Like batting average matters. Like I think it's a little bit outdated of a stat, of course, but like if you're hitting 300, you're a pretty good hitter. That's kind of the simplicity of baseball. Is if you're getting a hit 3 times out of 10, you're a pretty good hitter. Of course, I think on base percentage is a better metric than batting average. WRC plus is that number one, is that all encompassing stat, but batting average still matters. So, Dad, if you love batting average, man, like props to you because batting average does still matter. I don't think he understands that exit velocity isn't like if you're hitting if you have a 95 mile per hour average exit velocity, it doesn't mean you're always getting a hit, but it does mean that you're hitting the ball real hard. And of course, the simplicity of that is the more often you hit the ball really hard, the better your chances are that you're going to get more hits, right? The more balls in play that are hit really hard, the more often than not, those are going to become hits. So that's why exit velocity matters. It's just if you're hitting the ball hard, you should have. It doesn't happen all the time, right? I think Morel was a guy that we saw that didn't necessarily pan out last season, but it's usually just a good measure, and you're likelier to get hits if you're hitting the ball hard, right? And then with the PCA stuff, like I do agree that if he can continue to do this with his base running style, He does have the makings of a really good leadoff hitter, but I do think Ian Happ right now, he gets on base at a really high clip. He's a good hitter, and he gets on base, and that's what you need at the top of the order. He's got solid speed. He's not slow by any means, but you know if PCA can become that leadoff hitter, and honestly, if you can move Hap into like the fifth or sixth spot in the lineup with PCA moving up to first, if PCA can handle it and be good in that spot, like that's a pretty good lineup for the Cubs, especially if you're talking about just this season and what they have. Like maybe that's their best lineup at some point in the season. We'll see, but I do think that PCA does have the qualities of a good leadoff hitter, and remains to be seen if Council puts him in that spot at any point this season. We'll see. So to close it out, Cubs up in Milwaukee starting Friday for a 3-game set. You got Ben Brown going against Quinn Priester on Friday, and I should have looked this up, but I think it was 7 no-hit innings for Ben Brown in Milwaukee. One of the last times that he pitched last season before he went down with injury for basically for the year. So the site of one of his best major league outings. See if he can go back up there. The Brewers haven't looked that good offensively recently, so we'll see if Ben Brown can go out and kind of do that again in Milwaukee. And then you got Jameson Taillon versus Jose Quintana on Saturday. Former Cub Jose Quintana, the return in the Dylan Cease, Eloy Jimenez deal. And Sunday you have Shota Imanaga versus Freddie Peralta. So that's Shota is the Cubs ace right now. He's their top of the rotation guy, and Freddie Peralta he's been pretty good for Milwaukee this season. Like he's a guy that a few years ago made up a really strong top 3 with Corbin Burns and Brandon Woodruff. Burns is obviously not in the Brewers anymore, and Woodruff is still working back from a major shoulder surgery that he hasn't pitched yet this season. He didn't pitch all of 2024. So Freddie, of that 3-headed monster from a few years ago, Freddie Peralta is the one remaining, and he's been really good for the Brewers this season. I think he hasn't necessarily gone super deep into starts, but when he has been in there, he's been pretty good. So that should be a pretty interesting pitching matchup for the two teams on Sunday. But it's the Cubs coming off their first taste of division play this season. They go into Milwaukee 19-13. They're going to face off against one of their biggest division rivals for the first time this season in Milwaukee. And so, another good test. It's going to be a test for, obviously, the Brewers to see how they stack up with the Cubs, considering what's kind of happened over the last year, or at least over the offseason, and how it felt like the teams at least flipped in projections. And a good test for the Cubs against a team that's had their number, at least as far as the standings go, basically every year over the last 6-7 years. Good test coming up for the Cubs when it comes to division play, but they are in a great spot, 19-13, first in the division, one of the best records in Major League Baseball. Great spot for them, and we'll see if they can continue going with that. So for today's Addison to 35th podcast, I'm Ryan Herrera, your host for this Cubs episode. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment, subscribe. If you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, subscribe, leave a review, give it 5 stars, all that good stuff. Appreciate the support. Would love some more. For this episode of the Addison to 35th podcast, I am Ryan Herrera. Until next time, have a good one.